الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على المصطفى وعلى آله وصحبته ومن اهتدى بهديه إلى يوم اللقاء وبعد. My beloved brethren, most respected elders, mothers and sisters, in the past there was a king known as the Pharaoh, the Fir'aun. And the Fir'aun made a drastic claim. He said, أَنَا رَبُّكُمُ الْأَعْلَى. I am your Lord Most High. Now as humans, you can anticipate that if another human tells you, I am God, you will have questions. You know, because you talk like me, you walk like me, you go to the toilet like me, that's not very possible for you to be God. Like the human intellect can kind of cancel that out by itself to say, listen, probably not. So the Fir'aun recognized this, that this is going to be a difficult sale. So what he did, he enlisted the service or the services of magicians. And the magicians came about to basically perception manage, to make a human into a god. So they came with their crafts and their tricks and their magic, and they attributed the greatness to the Pharaoh, and the human, the toilet-going human, became God. So historically, eons ago, humankind recognized that perception management is important. Fast forward a fair few centuries into our times, and the magicians in their old capacity have gone. They're around, I mean, there's still black magic and stuff around, magic is around. But the perception managers have changed. They have come in the form of screens today. TV and media and internet. And they manage perception, so they make ropes look like snakes and snakes look like ropes. And until the haqq comes, until the truth comes, because when the truth came in the time of the Fir'aun, when Musa alayhi salam came, the truth devoured the falsehood. And Allah Rabbul Izzah says, وَقُلْ جَاءَ الْحَقُّ وَزَهَقَ الْبَاطِلِ إِنَّ الْبَاطِلَ كَانَ زَهُوقًا. And say the truth has come and become manifest, and falsehood has perished. Falsehood by its nature is perishable. So, in our times, truth is the only thing that will set us free. And as the famous biblical statement, seek ye the truth, and the truth shall set you free. So we have come here today at a time where really difficult images are being associated with Islam. You know, I was thinking about it. If you get a car, a Suzuki, you know, and I think Suzuki is a cheap car. And if anyone has it, khalas, it's an expensive car, but you know what I mean, yeah? Suzuki's are relatively cheap brands. And if you take the emblem out, you know, that logo, the emblem of Suzuki out, and slap on it a Merc one, a Mercedes, and call it Mercedes, that would be a real injustice to Mercedes, because that's Suzuki. And the same thing is happening with Islam today. So you get really strange organizations who are as far away from Islamic thought and Islamic ideology and Islamic creed as East is from the West, as Suzuki is from Mercedes, and yet they've labeled it Islam, an Islamic state, an Islamic government, and the world treats it like that. It's Suzuki, it's not the real one. So what we're doing tonight is to give a glimpse of what an actual Muslim world looked like, so that our young and our old, and the Muslim and non-Muslim, can kind of rest assured and, number one, recognize that we have a long legacy of contribution to the world in its entirety. And that legacy and that contribution and that notions should not be hijacked by rogue organizations. And the world and the media should not do the injustice of associating the classics with the fake. So our story starts in the year 1519. If you rewind 27 years prior to this date, you will come to 1492. Anyone know the significance of 1492? Yes.
That's when the Americas was discovered, and that's when the year of
Good. MashaAllah. Allah bless you, Ya Rab. Everyone, can I have a big MashaAllah for this young man? That wasn't big. A big MashaAllah, please. That's better. Allah ikrimak, Ya Rab. So, 1492, Spain fell from Muslim hands. What had happened? For years, a Catholic monarchy was growing next to Spain. And it was becoming boisterous and confident, and Muslims were dwindling. Eventually, they took over Spain, which the Muslims had been ruling for almost 800 years. Now, there is a theory in trading. They say success breeds success. Victory breeds victory. And they say train for success. So you set yourself tasks that you can do easily. That makes you feel confident. You go, for example, Jilan's here. So we'll go, imagine a person joins the gym. And then in the gym they say, I'll come and train 7 days a week. Now, as soon as someone says that, he's setting himself up for failure, because he's not training 7 days a week. It's difficult to do. You need constant motivation and energy and so on. So, it's not going to happen. But if he were to say, I'm training twice a week, that's an achievable aim. And if he does it, then he feels nice and confident. Self-efficacy grows, self-determination grows. Yes, I can, grows. So then he can increase it to 3 days a week. Do you understand me? You train for success. So, and success brings success. And remember that with your kids. Don't set them abnormal goals. Become a Hafiz by tomorrow, sweetheart. It's not going to happen. Yeah? Set logical goals that they can succeed and then feel confident that they can. So their success in Spain made them more confident. And pretty soon, this Catholic monarchy grew. And until they came up with their emperor, and they dubbed him the Holy Roman Emperor. And this happened in 1519. He is Charles V. Now remember, Charles hails from a Spanish background. And so if you look at my blurry image there, Spain is down here, Italy is there. Both of these are Catholic nations, and as you go up towards Germany and Belgium, they were Catholics too. The only Protestant nation was the French in the middle. So as you can imagine, Catholics and Protestants don't get along too well. So there was a lot of friction there. And they call these the Italian Wars. And this lasted a long time. So there was constant fights over bits of Italy, Milan, and so on and so forth. And this lasted for about 6 years. So we say war rages in Europe. It's a very dramatic little titles you will notice I'm using tonight. So 6 years later, a decisive battle took place and France lost. And there's losing and there's losing. This was a very significant loss. Their king got caught and was made captive. This is their king, Francis I. So Francis I, the Protestant king, was caught on battle, and he was imprisoned by the Spaniards. And one of the nicknames of Francis was the owner of the great nose. I think it's self-evident from there why. It's a real title. I'm not making this up. It's true. So Francis is in prison, and I'm anticipating the prison of kings is different from the ordinary men, so he might have been put on a house arrest or palace arrest or something like that, but he was in prison. So Francis thought what to do. How do I get myself out of this mess? And looking around, you saw from the previous map, he's pretty much surrounded by a faith that will not support him. So he reached out to this man. Allah bless this man, say Ameen. This is Sulaiman the Magnificent. The Arabs call him Sulaiman al-Qanuni. So a special envoy, a confidant of Francis, traveled and came to Sulaiman al-Qanuni, to the court, to the assembly of Sulaiman. And the court of Sulaiman was a special court. You couldn't hear a sound. And he used to give instructions by motion of his hand, like go. But there wasn't any talk in his court. He didn't like noise. Very contemplative man, very learned man, a mujahid leader, but very somber. So the envoy came to him and told him that Francis I has lost to Spain. And His Majesty, the King of France, Francis, has sent to your court asking for help to release him from the bondage of the Spaniards and at the same time regain his throne. So Sulaiman the Magnificent listened. And then he ordered for a letter to be written, and the letter was written, and this is the letter in the archives of the Ottomans, and it was sent with this envoy back to Francis. And when you read this letter, you get a glimpse of what the Islamic world was like. I will share little bits and pieces of it with you in Arabic and a fuller version in English. So he starts by glorifying Allah Rabbul Izzah and sending salutations on the Prophet. And then he says, this is just a section of it. أنا سلطان السلاطين وبرهان الخواقين. I am the sovereign of sovereigns and the throne holder of the Ottomans. أنا سلطان البحر الأبيض. I am the sovereign of the Mediterranean. والبحر الأسود, and of the Black Sea. والبحر الأحمر, and of the Red Sea. وأنادول والرمل وقرمان الروم وولاية ذي القدرية وديار بكر وكردستان وأذربيجان والعجم والشام ومصر ومكة ومدينة والقدس وجميع ديار العرب والعجم وبلاد مجر والقيصر وبلاد أخرى كثيرة افتتحتها يد جلالتي بسيف الظفر ولله الحمد والله أكبر. When I read it, I cried. He says, I'll just put a bit of it up in English. I am the Sultan of Sultans, the Sovereign of Sovereigns, the dispenser of crowns to monarchs, the vicegerent of Allah on earth. I am the Sovereign of the Mediterranean Sea, and the Black Sea, and the Red Sea, and Romilla, and Antolio, and Karmania, and the land of Rum, and Zulqadriya, and Diyar Bakr, and of Kurdistan, and Azerbaijan, and Persia, and Damascus, and Aleppo, and Cairo, and of Mecca, and Medina, and Jerusalem, and all of the lands of the Arabs, and the Yemen, and of many other lands which has been conquered by my glorious hand and victorious blade, and yet all praise belongs to Allah, and He indeed is the greatest. And then he tells this man, your news has been conveyed to me, and I have got full knowledge of what has happened. And I have come to find out that you have been imprisoned and dethroned from your kingdom. And you have asked my help to free you from your bondage and give you your kingdom back. So he says, it is no astonishing news that monarchs lose and monarchs go to prison. And understand, he writes just before this, he says, Ana Sultan Sulaiman bin Sultan Salim bin Sultan Bayezid ila Francis Malik Wilayat Faransa. I am Sultan Sulaiman, the son of Sultan Salim, the son of Sultan Bayezid. This letter is from me to you, the king of the province of France. Like mine is the kingdom, yours is a province of France. So he says to him, free your mind of thoughts and worry. Our nation has never held back in defeating a foe and taking over his lands, and we have conquered many difficult lands and many difficult cities, and what has been said will be done. This is it. I want to leave the story here, and I will come back to it at the end of my presentation tonight as to what actually happened and transpired. But I want you to have a look at the Khilafah under the last of the Muslim rulers, and this is the Ottomans. And when he says, I am the sovereign of the Mediterranean and the Red Sea and the Black Sea, and it covered most of the globe. And then on the other side was still Muslim land, Isfahan in Iran towards the other side, and that is the empty quarter or the desert lands of Arabia. And on this side towards Morocco and northern Africa, they were all still Muslim lands, just under different monarchs. But Sulaiman at his time, or the Ottomans at their time, were the supreme rulers of the bulk of the Muslim lands. The question tonight is, what did this Muslim world look like inside? Like, it is easy to conquer lots of land. Genghis Khan did it, and he massacred people and built towers from the skulls of people. But what was a Muslim civilization like? And that is what we want to have a look at. The first, it was a civilization with humanity. It felt and supported and helped other humans. There's a story that, let me just get my papers out, that in Ireland, a disease filled the potato plantations. And their main food was potatoes in Ireland, especially amidst the poor. So a product of this, that there was very little food produced that year. And a lot of people died, and the Irish dubbed it the Great Hunger. And they say 1 million people died and 1 million people left, the locality. 1 million is a lot of people to die. It isn't that there wasn't any food in Ireland, there was. But Ireland was subjugated by the English. And a lot of the property was owned by the English. So the produce that was produced was sent back to England. And the poor died in Ireland. So eventually, news of this reached the Ottoman Caliph, that there are humans, non-Muslims, Christians dying in Ireland out of poverty. Please help. And this was a time where the Ottomans were having some internal problems as well. So the Khalifa felt a huge sense of responsibility. And in his humanity with man, he promised that I will send 10,000 silver pounds to Ireland. But at the same time, he was not a reckless ruler. And he recognized that Ireland is under the stewardship of Britain. So he found out how much the British Queen Victoria, is doing to help out Ireland. And he found that she's only giving 2,000 silver pounds. And he had promised 10,000. So in recognizing that this would make her look very small, he reduced his number to 1,000. Do you see that Muslim monarchs didn't want the disruptions of other lands and other systems? But he said, I have made a promise of 10,000. I have to take goods to them equivalent to that sum, although in money I will give only 1,000. So he sent 1,000 silver coins, which comes to 1 million something in our currency, pounds, to them. And then he sent 5 shiploads of grains. And he sent it through a very long way. So Istanbul is there. It sailed all the way through those lands until it reached Ireland on the other side. There was no income to expect, no business. This is just helping his fellow man. And when it reached there, the people were very overwhelmed, and the nobles of Ireland wrote this letter of thanks and gratitude back to the Sultan. And it reads a little like this. We, the noblemen, gentlemen, and inhabitants of Ireland, want to express our thanks and gratitude for the Ottoman Sultan's magnificent assistance. The Sultan's response to this aid call displays an example to European states. Numbers were relieved and saved from perishing through this timely act. We express our gratitude on their behalf and hope that the Ottoman Sultan and his dominions will be saved from the afflictions which have befallen us. In recognition of the timely act of this gracious Khalifa, they adopted the symbol of the crescent in the star in some of their government buildings. And today, their soccer team wears this proudly on their shirts, in memory of what the Ottoman Caliph had done for them, at a time when very few would come to their aid. And not only did the Istanbul send, but other Muslim parts of the Islamic Khilafat, Bombay and other countries, they all sent goods to this land so that they could save their fellow man. And you contrast this approach with the senseless approach that is being associated with Muslim governments today, and you see a direct contrast that what is real and what is fake, what is Suzuki and what is Mercedes. We are dubbed as a backward nation, holding humanity back, but I want you to see what the Muslim nation really looked like. I am arguing that Islam was a very progressive organization, the Muslim government. And when Islam came, and the amount of emphasis it put on ilm and knowledge, it created a culture of seeking and learning. You know, everyone wanted to learn. Everyone wanted to know. Allah Rabbul Izzah in the Quran says, look at the heavens. So the Muslim would look at the heavens. And I remember the words of Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton was trying to discover this gravity between planets. And you know, what is keeping the moon there? Why isn't the moon flying around? And he says, staring at the celestial bodies, at the moon and at the stars and stuff. He says, I thought about it until my head began to ache and sleep perished. So the Quran required that type of reflection. Think. So Muslims, devout Muslims were there thinking, contemplating, studying, learning what is happening. And through this, and you can see pictures from those times, they came about with trigonometry and geometry and astronomy and all the rest of the sciences. So sciences began to develop. And the contrast was mind-boggling. Here's a fantastic thing. This is not from those times, this is modern, but I couldn't find an old library, so I've gone with the modern one. In France, there was a library. And understand, Francis I was considered a very literate person. Right? And this is in the 1530s. So, in France, there was a library. How many books? You can guess. 700 books in the Library of France. 700 books. At the same time, in Spain, Islam, in Muslim Spain, one library had 500,000 books. And there was more than 700 libraries. Or is it 70? Anyway, it's a factor of 10. Just forgive it if I've got it wrong. And when the Catholics came and took over, they wanted to take all sign of Islamic contribution off. To build a fake history. And they have in Spain. That they came and did dhulm and wrong and oppressed and nonsense. So then they burnt 1 million textbooks. 1 million, and books in those days were not printed, they were written. Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyya lillahi darruh stood on the minbar on his end of days. And he said, with this hand I have written 2,000 books. With this, I have written 2,000 books. One of the Muslim scholars, one of his works is 800 volumes. One of his works. And he was such a scholar, so dedicated to knowledge, that he used to say, between ka'k and bread, I opt for ka'k. You know, it's that dryish, anyway, the Arabs know what I'm talking about. Yeah, between that and bread, I opt for that dry one. Because I just have to break it, put it in my mouth, swallow it with water. I don't need to waste time chewing. If I have bread and chew, it wastes too much time. And that's why his work, you know, 800 books, one person writing, your hand will go numb. But just one of his works, 800 volumes, 3 of which has been printed. So point is that scholarship, ilm and knowledge started to take root, and people competed in knowledge. And because of the safety and security and welfare that Islam had in place, innovation started. And I don't say innovations in deen, but innovations in technology. So you have like this wonderful individual. Such an amazing story. You know, he had a longing to fly. Do you know when you want to fly? When there's nothing else to do on land anymore. You know, if people are surviving, they're too busy surviving. Once life is good, then you start looking for other things to do. So Islam provided such a good life that this gentleman decided, why can't I fly like birds? So he went to the Grand Mosque and he made what is probably the first parachute and stood on the minaret and jumped down, you know, hoping to fly. And he had a rough landing, the poor guy. At this stage, he was relatively young. He had a rough landing, you know, aches and bruises, but he survived. His next attempt, he was 75 years old. I need you to focus on this and imagine a 75-year-old trying to fly. Can you imagine? There's a few distinct things about personalities of early Muslims. They had resilience. They didn't give up quick. You know, if he set his mind to something, khalas, he was going to do it. So this time round, he made that other little thing of his, that one. And he put eagle feathers on silk and bamboos, and then went to the local mountain. And wallah, it's a risky game, and I don't encourage kids to do it. It's already done. Like, we got aeroplanes now, it's finished, khalas. So he stood there and he jumped. And he flew for about 10 minutes. But his landing was a bit rough. So he goes, it didn't have a tail. Like, if I had put a tail, it would have been better. And it took the Wright brothers years before they came back to where this individual was in Muslim lands. In the field of medicine, Islam was centuries ahead of everyone else. One of the physicians in Cordoba, in Spain, went to the non-Muslim side to medicate and see what's going on in their medical world. So he says, I saw a man with a cyst on his leg. So I suggested, you know, an incision, a cut, clear the filth, sew it back up, tidy it, it will be fine. And I saw a lady who had breathing problems, so he prescribed, you know, boil these vapors so it, you know, soothes the inside and the lungs and so on and so forth. So he goes, then their own doctor came, a doctor from the non-Muslim lands. Because this guy is just giving advice. People don't really trust you. You know, you've got a long beard. You're not really a scientist. Afwan Shaykhana. So he came to their own doctor came and he goes, nah, nonsense. Bring the sword. So he took the sword and he goes, duh! They smacked the guy's leg. The meat cut open, the bone, it reached the bone, it went through the bone, the marrow came out, the man fell down dead after a few minutes. So he goes, he went to the lady with the breathing problem, and he goes, she's possessed. No, serious. It's documented in his diary. So what he did, he said, bring the knife. He cut her head until it reached the bone of the skull. And he drew a big, nice, solid cross on it. And he goes, bring me salt. And then held salt on her to help her breathe. And because obviously if you have breathing problems, you know, anxiety and panic will probably not help. So she died too. And I don't see why you're laughing. It's a very sad thing. All right. So, progressive nation. Here's another thing. The streets of Spain were paved 400 years before it would even reach Britain. Like 400 years before the Brits could even think and contemplate paving the roads, Muslim lands were already paved. I'm trying to show the difference, because the aim is to make the world lose confidence in Islam. So to say barbarics, savages, without any vision, any contribution, and then they give us these fake organizations, and we've got young amidst us dumb enough to believe that that is the real thing. In contrast to everything that Allah and His Prophet has preached and said. And then, you know, because of their lack of understanding and lack of ilm and hilm and a desire to matter, khalas, let's do something that looks relatively strong and dead stupid. But classic Islam wasn't like that. Then there is this notion that, you know, we keep women back and we are oppressive that way. So let's look at female scholars in Islam. My teacher and Sheikh Dr. Akram Nadwi, Hafidhahullah Ta'ala, has done a research 15 years in just the female scholars of hadith. Just the female scholars of hadith. Not in the other sciences, just one science, hadith. And he says, in my humble research, I have found 9,000 scholars who are female in the science of hadith. Not small, giant of scholars. At the same time, if you look at the rest of the world, in the dark mountains of Europe, the Catholic Church didn't used to recognize women as human. And then later on the church said, okay, they're human, but they're a subclass human. And they have a filthy soul. And if you left Europe and went there to the subcontinent, there, if a husband died, they used to burn the wife alive with him. The practice was called sati. It was there even when the British colonized India. There's footages of it. Now, traditionally in Indian society, forget about Bollywood, I'm talking about the original India, right? And you would get older guys marrying younger girls. So, by default, he was going to go first. You know, So the problem was that when he's dead, this young lady is left. And the rule was they used to beautify her. And then the Hindus burned their dead. So they used to make the fire. They used to sit her on top of the wood and then burn her and him together. And obviously the flames catch you and you start to scream and nature takes over and you want to run. Then they had these long sticks and they used to keep the girl down on the fire. So that was India in womankind. And that was Europe in womankind. And if you look at Arabia before Islam came, they used to bury their daughters alive. قال سبحانه بأي ذنب قتلت وإذا الموءودة سئلت بأي ذنب قتلت. When the infant, female infant, will be asked, for what sin were you killed, dear child? So this was the world before Islam, and in Islam, and when Islam came, it encouraged scholarship and contribution from all genders, so that you had people like Amra bint Abdul Rahman. She was a giant of the scholars of hadith, and she used to give fatwa, like verdicts, not when she was alone, at the time when scholars like Urwa ibn Zubayr was still alive, in the same locality. Once, listen to this story. The local judge, and judges in Islam are learned people. You don't get any Tom, Dick and Harry, khalas, come, I want you to make judgments here. Learned people. So the judge, a case was presented to him. A Syrian Christian was caught for stealing, and he was brought to the Islamic court for justice. And the Islamic law with regards to stealing is the cutting of the hand. So the judge decided the law is cut off his hand. So news reached Amra, and she sent her messenger to the judge. Tell the judge to stop. So the judge stopped. You cannot cut his hand, release him. Because I have a hadith from Aisha radiyallahu anha, who said, the Prophet said, if the theft is less than a quarter dinar, you do not cut the hand. And he has stolen less than a quarter, let him be. So he was released immediately on the command of a lady, at a time where the rest of the world didn't consider them human. And then we are the oppressors of women. Darda was another scholar of hadith. And just so that you see contribution, she used to teach in the actual masjid, in the grand mosque of Damascus in Syria for 6 months, and then go for 6 months and teach in Al-Aqsa. And her students included the Khalifa of the time, Abdul Malik ibn Marwan. And Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, don't think he's like the current rulers. He doesn't know his right hand from his left hand. It wasn't like that. The son of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu reached an old age, and he was on his deathbed. The son of Umar ibn al-Khattab. So at his deathbed, the people began to panic. And they said, O elders of the Quraysh, it looks like you're all about to perish. You're all dying one after the other. Who will we ask after you? So he said, Marwan has a son. Ask him after us. This is Abdul Malik. He was so learned, a faqih and an alim, that the son of Umar ibn al-Khattab said, ask him after us. And this Khalifa used to sit as a student at the feet of Darda to learn hadith from her. And when her dars used to finish, he used to help her to go to the female lines for the salah. And stories like this are many and numerous. You can look at the work of Dr. Akram Nadwi for further reference on that, inshallah ta'ala. Now, back to our story. Do you remember the story? All right. So, Sulaiman al-Qanuni wrote a letter to the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. And the letter was very blunt. And he said, you will pay this much money to me annually and you will release Francis. You know Francis of France, the one that was captured by, he goes, you will release that monarch and you will send this much money as tax to me annually. So, the emperor, the Holy Roman Emperor, Charles V, you know, remember how I said success builds success? He was on a high. You know, no way, this is not going to happen. So Sulaiman al-Qanuni sent him this man. He's Khairuddin Barbarossa. You will see him in movies as the pirate. You know, with the red beard and one eye. That's because they want to make your heroes look bad, so that you don't have anything to aspire towards. But this was a general of the Ottoman Empire. And he went to Hungary and laid siege to it. And within a few months, conquered the whole country. So, Charles released Francis and agreed to pay 30,000 gold coins a year to the Ottoman Khilafat as tax. And the Khalifa told him, there cannot be two emperors on earth at the same time. From now on, you are the king of Spain. So he became just the king of Spain. And Sulaiman al-Qanuni, when he took over this new country, he didn't reign in there. He didn't bring it part of the Ottoman Empire. Instead, he let it be and he withdrew back. And then the actual king that had fought him ran away and died later on. A new king came and he came to Sulaiman al-Qanuni. And he swore allegiance to him and he said, we will be under your protection, but we will be an independent state. And Sulaiman al-Qanuni accepted this and they lived in harmony for the years to come. And the friendship with France developed here. And they remained in good terms and as friends for, a few centuries until Napoleon attacked Egypt, which was part of the Ottoman Empire later on. And you will understand, whenever there's a treaty, you won't find the Muslim in history break the treaty first. So France broke that treaty and attacked the Muslim lands in Egypt under Napoleon. But so King Charles Charles V just became the king of Spain, and Khairuddin Barbarossa was faced with one of the biggest and final challenges of the times, and that was the armada of the Spanish ships. So the Pope himself came and made a declaration that you have to help against the Ottoman Khilafah. So the Catholics poured wealth and money and support until they amassed 6,000 ships and 60,000 soldiers, sailors. And they came to attack the Muslim lands. So Khairuddin Barbarossa went out to meet him. And he had with him 122 ships and some 22,000 men, as opposed to the 60,000 that they had. And out, of acute experience in years on the field. Allah Rabbul Izzah made him come up with a strategy. And in 5 hours, he destroyed the whole of the ships. So he came back. And then, remember, because Spain has just been taken from the Muslims. And you've heard Spanish Inquisition. That was made to go and root out remnants of Islam and Muslims and Jews that might have still existed in those lands. And you look at church history and church documentations, some of the ugliest punishments in the annals of human history was invented by the church there to punish Muslims and Jews who were considered to hide their faiths in Christian lands. So then Khairuddin Barbarossa left here and went to Spain and freed the Muslims from the Inquisition there. And by the time he came back to the Ottoman lands, the Khalifa himself came down to meet him at the shores of the Khilafat. And they say when the news came that he has defeated the Armada of the Spain, takbirs went out in Mecca and in Medina and in Bombay and in Istanbul, celebrating the achievement of this awesome individual. I will conclude. The question is, so what happened? Because today we're very different from what we used to be. What happened? My belief, my analysis, and my input in it is, we changed. We changed. The rule is, listen carefully, Allah will give you what you deserve. If you deserve and have the competencies, the skills, the abilities, to be able to handle a responsibility, Allah will give you that. When you don't deserve it anymore and no longer have the competencies, abilities, requirements to handle that office, Allah takes it from you. The verse says the same. ذلك بأن الله لم يكن مغيرا نعمة أنعمها على قوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم. Allah will not take a favor that He has favored you with, except when you change so much that you no longer deserve the favor, so Allah snatches it from you good and clean. And He won't give it back to you. إن الله لا يغير ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم. Allah won't change your condition until you change what is within yourselves. So when you change yourself and you become like your predecessors that passed before you, Allah will return the favors back to you. So the secret of it all, in a short sentence, is internal. Become people and have the stamina, the courage, the resilience, the competencies of the old, and Allah will give you the honors of the old. And have the weaknesses and the pathetic lethargicness that seems to be grappling the Muslim world, and you will get what you have today. فقلت ما قلت إن تك حسنة فمن الله وإن تك سيئة فمن نفسي وشيطان والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.